My guest today told me, on the record, that there was a stretch of her career where part of her was actively rooting for hospitalization. Not because she wanted to be hurt, because if her body broke first, the choice would already be made for her. She would not have to be the one to walk away. She was the frog that did not jump out of the boiling pot. More on that later. She sat in it for years. And then one ordinary Tuesday, her boss put a proposal in front of her, and something in her body finally said no. This is the story almost nobody tells about leaving a toxic career. Welcome to the Comeback Show. I'm your host, Jen Fast, and this is the space where we talk honestly about the messy, beautiful, and sometimes painful process of rebuilding your life in midlife and beyond. If you've ever felt like you were becoming someone new, but weren't quite sure who that person was yet, this show is for you. Today's guest is Jen Fieldman. Jen is a business strategist and human design practitioner for women entrepreneurs managing brain fog, fatigue, and/or chronic pain. She helps clients stop the swirl and take clear, focused action by designing strategies personalized to them and their business. Jen spent close to 20 years inside ad agencies, research vendors, and corporate marketing. The last decade of that stretch was, in her words, toxic everywhere she went. She did not leave dramatically. She did not have a backup plan. What she had was 18 months that almost killed her brain. A proposal her boss handed her, one ordinary Tuesday that broke something loose, and just enough of a nest egg to take the leap. We're going to talk about the frog who stays in the slowly boiling pot, because that was Jen. We will talk about what it actually costs to leave when you are the only income. And we'll talk about the 18 months that wrecked her health. The OB who told her she could not possibly be in perimenopause because she was on birth control, and the AI tools she built for herself first before she even knew there was a market for them. And because Jen is also a human design practitioner, I let her run my chart. Apparently, I am a 5-2 emotional generator, which may explain an embarrassing amount of my life. We get into that too. I think this conversation is going to be real with a touch of humor and a little bit therapeutic. Jen Fieldman, welcome to the Comeback Show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and to talk to you today and for all your people to listen.
Okay, before we go anywhere serious, I have to flag something for the audience because it's too good to leave out. This just tickles my ADHD with a touch of the TISM brain. I'm Jen with 2 N's, you're Jen with 1 N. Your last name is Fieldman. My maiden name was Friedman. I point that out because if listeners are looking at the show notes for links to reach out to either of us, or if they're Google stalking us, I don't want them to get confused.
I appreciate that.
So between that and the 2 Jens thing, we decided that we were meant to be best friends, and there's a strong possibility that will happen. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled program. For the people meeting you for the first time, how would you introduce yourself to my audience in your own words?
I'm a business strategist and a human design practitioner for women entrepreneurs, and my focus is on the women who are also suffering from brain fog, fatigue, and or chronic pain, because I personally deal with both of those, and business needs to be different. It doesn't mean it can't be successful. It's just a lot of the advice out there is not really specific for women managing things like that.
Narrowing your focus down to a specific group of women, the women dealing with brain fog, chronic fatigue, and pain. That was a fairly recent development. What changed for you that finally had you focus on them?
This fall, I just kind of had this download, for lack of a better word, on like, you know what, maybe this is really where I need to play more and highlight it. And then in May, had an opportunity to be, and it's how we ended up connecting, in a woman's guide. And the guide was specifically for other business owners who have a capacity constraint, I believe is the way it was phrased. So it could be anything from, mental health, physical health, ADHD, anxieties, caregiving, all these different things. And when the opportunity came into my inbox, it was like, you know that scene in Beetlejuice in the original where he says showtime? That's kind of like what happened, because all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute. This is something I'm qualified to speak on and to talk about. And so that was sort of my sign of just feeling like super excited about it and super passionate about it. And from there, it just became this like very tiny but very impactful decision, because it's just a little bit of focus, but it actually created so much more clarity and focus in my own business.
It's funny how simple decisions can just lead to a cascade of events. So I found you in the Capacity Chronicles, and when I read your contribution, I found your story so compelling that I reached out to you. What did you see in that email from me that made you agree to a video call?
Oh my God. It was honestly one of the best things ever. And so anyone who has a Squarespace website, and maybe it's all websites that do this, it's like I get spam in my contact messages all the time. And so, I see something come across from Squarespace. I'm like, oh God, what is this? But I opened them all, and you really saw me. The fact that you reached out and just being able to resonate with one person is so meaningful for me. And it was like, oh my God, like somebody sees this and they find value in what I offered, which, I don't have major self-esteem issues, but I think it can sometimes be this, you're in this silo and you're like, is it, because I'm looking at what I contributed and I was like, oh, that might have been a typo, or that wasn't quite right. It was like, oh, you got it right away. Just the fact that I can't remember if I told you this when we had our call, but I wanted to use part of what you actually said and reflected back to me as part of my bio, because it was that like, oh yeah, she gets it. She sees it.
Well, feel free to use that anytime you like. And isn't it amazing, like the times that we decide to be vulnerable or do something new, or the times we decide to just reach out to somebody in kindness, what can come from that? So hopefully that's a lesson for everyone. Okay, so on that prep call that we did, you gave me a metaphor that I have not been able to stop thinking about since, and I want you to walk the audience through it. The two frogs, the one who jumps out of the boiling pot and the one who stays in the water as the heat slowly goes up. Which frog were you?
I was the second one. So for anyone who doesn't know the metaphor, it's, if you it's also super dark. If you throw a frog in a pot of boiling water, they will immediately jump out. If you put a frog in a pot of, cold or lukewarm water and you slowly turn up the heat, they won't. And I really felt like that was the last 8-ish years of my like corporate career. I'm making air quotes, because I really wanted that like big moment, right? That like big, like I wanted the decision taken away from me. I wanted something to happen where it was like, oh no, like, no, I had to quit. Like I had to leave. It wasn't, this choice that I made. I don't know if it's a gender thing or not, but like women just leaving their jobs with no plan and going out on their own, that doesn't happen as much. Once I was finally able to take that leap, I really realized like how long I spent in that water, just slowly getting worse and worse.
I think I have been both frogs at different points in my life, and maybe all of us have been. You did mention that moment where part of you actually was looking forward to ending up in the hospital, maybe, because then someone else would have made that choice for you. Talk to me about that. What did that version of you need?
I do have a therapist. Like my mental health is taken care of. One of my chronic conditions is Crohn's disease. So it's something I've had for 20 years. And there's a couple other fun things sprinkled in within the past decade or so. And it just got to the point where my stress was so bad and it felt like there were, like all of a sudden my gallbladder needs to be removed. Like all these different things are happening. And I was like, if I just like ended up in the hospital, maybe like a little 1 or 2 day stay, like then it would be a quote unquote big enough thing for me to have to change what I was doing and leave my job because the stress was so terrible.
I think there are going to be so many women who hear that and have to honestly say, you know what? I understand.
At one point in time, there was a possibility that I had rheumatoid arthritis. I do not. It was something else. But I remember my mom, who also suffers from a lot of chronic illness, had said to me, if that's what this is, then we really need to make some changes. Like, we should look at if you want to move to a house that doesn't have as many stairs, like things like that. So it's like there are certain things that happen, in my case, a diagnosis where it was like, oh, okay, this is your sign to do something different or your sign to change. And I was really hoping for that to happen to me versus me having to just really like, and also I had to own my decision. And when I say own, I mean defend, because not to myself, but to other people judging, like, you're going out on your own, you're quitting your job with no plan. It's, it's different if it's like, oh, well, I had a health crisis, I have to cut my stress, right? Then everyone's like, oh, totally, we get it. But for me to just say, my burnout's so bad I can't do this anymore, no, that's not, quote unquote acceptable in this day and age, at least not in 2018. It sure wasn't.
And I'm here to tell you that in 2025, it wasn't either, because I had a similar experience that my listeners are probably tired of hearing me talk about. But for anyone who's new to us, I was under so much stress for so many years from a 30-year demanding career that it caused health problems for me, for sure. I mean, not just gaining 60 pounds and having high cholesterol and not being able to sleep, but it was finally the trip to the cardiologist's office that forced me to make a change. And I think it's just, for some reason, although we shouldn't need permission, sometimes we need permission. And so it was when the cardiologist told me, Jen, it is time for you to consider whether your career is compatible with your health, that I finally had the permission when shortly thereafter, kind of a last straw moment happened at work for me, which I know you can relate to. I just said, not doing this anymore, not doing this anymore. And I had so many people, when I just left, reach out to me to ask, are you okay? Because this was so out of character. It's so not a permission that a 50-year-old woman, for some reason, can just leave her career and not have to explain to everybody why. Let's talk about your last straw day. There was a proposal that your boss put in front of you, and your body just said no. Take me back to that moment. What were they asking you to do, and what was the thing inside you that finally said enough?
So it was my last quote unquote job. And a couple months prior, like, there's like corporate acquisitions, all these different things. Well, first they let my actual hiring manager boss go for really stupid reasons. Like, he made more than the person who was going to like oversee the whole strategy department. I was like, this is the stupidest thing ever. And then they put me under somebody who, frankly, I had more experience than. But the fact of the matter is that I had a lot more experience when it came to research and insights than she did. I was working on a proposal for a client. I hope people can just feel my eye rolls if they cannot see them. And what the client wanted to do was completely ridiculous, completely ridiculous. The scope of the project was like 20 plus focus groups across multiple cities, timelines that were like not realistic, all these things. And I just remember thinking, this is going to do it. Like, this is actually going to put me in a hospital, and not just like a quickie little like, oh, something happens and I have to, make a change. My body was, it's going to destroy us. Like, melodramatic, but there was no way I could do that. And, it just, a tiny little opportunity came up to potentially, this is my favorite part, someone in the building I was living in owned a vet's office, and she thought she was going to need someone temporary to run her front desk. And so she and I talked, and we were both taking the weekend to, both decide, like, does this feel like the right fit for both of us? And I made my first legit budget, I would call it, like my very, very accurate, like, okay, this is really how much I spend all the time. And after the weekend, I was like, yeah, F it. I'm gonna quit my job and take this and just help her out temporarily, just to like give myself a break. And what happened was she came back and said she was gonna, go in a slightly different direction, which was totally fine. And I was like, yeah, I'm quitting anyway. And I did.
So we both walked away without a plan. What was the gap for you between the moment like you knew you were going to do it and the moment you actually did, time-wise?
Oh, I'm pretty sure I put my 2 weeks in almost immediately. I may have given him 3. Yeah, I was out. I was super out. Once I had that tiny little opening, I couldn't, I wasn't doing it anymore. I mean, I was working bananas hours. I happened to be the 4th woman to leave my office location. So I worked for an agency. We had offices everywhere. I was the 4th woman to leave the Minneapolis office with no plan. And the only difference was it was just my income. But yeah, I was like, I'm out. I can't do this. And I was like, yeah, I'll just like freelance or do something, but I'm out. And I did.
Yeah.
I mean, even my therapist was like, wait a minute, what? I thought you were just thinking about maybe leaving. And I was like, yeah, I already gave notice. I'm done.
I think when you know, that felt that way for me. I think my last straw moment happened on my last day in the office, a Thursday before Labor Day last year. And something happened, and that made me think, I'm just going to go home now. I'm so stressed out. And I spent the whole long weekend just talking to my family, telling them what happened, and them reassuring me, you know what, if this is the last straw, that is okay. You can leave. We will figure everything else out. And so the way that I kind of made peace with the decision is I tried like a visualization thing my therapist recommended, which was, okay, say you've made this decision, you're going to leave, you're going to put in your notice on Tuesday when you get back online. How do you feel? And my body reacted instantly. I felt lighter, less stress, like I lost 200 pounds, just happy and relieved. But then I did the reverse. I said, okay, now pretend you are not putting in your notice when you go back online. You're going to stay. How do you feel? And I immediately, this blanket of dread, like draped over me. My heart dropped. My heart rate sped up. I mean, it was instant. You could feel it in your body. So that's how I knew I was making the right decision. Yeah.
I mean, I can feel that even now, thinking about not giving notice. No, thank you.
Let's talk a little bit more about that part of leaving a corporate career that almost nobody talks about, honestly. Most of the leaving corporate stories that you do hear about sound like the person had some runway. They had a partner with a steady income. They had 6 months of savings, a clean handoff. You did not have any of that. Walk me through as much of the math as you feel comfortable disclosing. Like, what did you have to work with and what did you have to give up that the influencer version of this story would never have admitted?
First, I just want to say the influencer version, when you dig into it a little bit or a lot, like I have, here's what the influencer version of I made 6 figures in my first 6 days or, 30 days or whatever. They aren't telling you, one, if they were working as a side hustle and they were building this busy business for like 2-3 years before they finally left their job. I worked with a coach once who had the story, I was broke and then I made like $8,000 my next month and just built and built. Well, yeah, but they were broke that month because something in their prior business that they were running had a hiccup. So they knew what they wanted to do, like everything else was already built. So sure, yeah, it's a lot easier. And also unlimited energy. Like, let's just talk about too, and I'll get to the question you asked and the topic, but there's a really, really big difference between quitting your job in your 40s or 50s and quitting it in your 20s and 30s. I'm sorry, it's different. I'm tired. I was tired. I was full of burnout. I did not realize how bad my burnout was. And it doesn't mean I didn't do anything while working through that, but it means that it probably took 2 years before I felt like I had fully shaken some of that leftover burnout off. Okay, so the thing that helped me do it, I had a tiny nest egg from selling a house. So I had a townhouse, I sold it, I made a profit. Again, this is like a decade ago almost. I was living in apartments and I had a tiny nest egg and also a big slightly naive outlook on like, hey, I can do this. Like people make it look easy online. So that's what I did. I had this like Excel spreadsheet that I made. I did have a friend who we lived in the same apartment building, and she had left her job from a big corporate career prior to me doing it. So she'd been sort of doing entrepreneur work for about a year before I did my thing. And yeah, it was like I had to decide like what I was going to do, right? Like I couldn't just take unlimited time off like some people do. Like some people are lucky they can take a couple months and do absolutely nothing. I gave myself 5 weeks, which I would go back and do that a little differently, but that was it. Like I had a nest egg, and then I probably gave myself a full 3 weeks of just like don't worry about anything, and then I started to worry about everything. And I think I picked up my first freelance job. Actually, I picked up a couple freelance jobs at first too, to just before I had actually committed to creating my own business. I just decided I would do some freelance work.
I love that you called out the difference between the influencer version of becoming an entrepreneur and how easy that is for some people, but also the difference in what decade of life you are in. For sure, we do not have the energy of a 20-year-old. And the other thing we don't have that I don't think people talk about is if we make a mistake or something fails, because we're humans, we don't have as much time to recoup our losses as a 20-year-old does. Now, you were the only income. So what does that pressure feel like the day trying to build something from nothing day to day?
So the pressure is a lot. I worried about money almost all the time once my freelance work ran out. And it ran out because I hated it. And that was sort of part of it. I did like my informal research. I would say about 3/4 of the people who leave their job to start a business have an idea of what they want to do. And then there's 1/4 of us who just leave and we're like, I don't know, I'm going to figure it out as I go. And I am someone who learned a lot about what I didn't want to do, what I refused to do. And so that makes it very difficult to figure out what you're going to do to actually bring money in. The minute I saw freelancing, it was like immediate. And I will say, like, there's a lot of pressure, right? It's me, it's my income. I have to take care of myself. Oh, P.S. I'm also, hopefully close to sort of retiring. I'm a lot closer than my 20-something self would have been. And, I'm also managing multiple chronic illnesses. That is super fun. And like, I don't know what to do with myself because I just don't know what I want to do. And the pandemic happened. I moved back in with my parents in my 40s. It was all just like the perfect, like synchronicity. We were going to go into lockdown. My lease was up in my apartment. I had a senior dog at the time who was very unhappy that I moved her from a townhouse to the 13th floor of a high rise. And I'm lucky and thankful enough that I had family who was willing to let me come home. And that's what I did. And that is also where I currently am, many years later than I planned. And yet I don't know how I would have been able to function with like some of the health stuff that came up if I had to be in a corporate career still. There's no way.
Thinking back on your corporate career, you spent 4 years officially at General Mills and then about 15 years across research vendors and ad agencies. Last 10 of that you said was really toxic. But I'd like to focus on the identity piece. You told me that most of your identity was built on your career. It was for me too. What did you find underneath the title once that title was gone?
I found I didn't know who I was. My identity was pretty much like who I was as a business or my job. And then a dog mom. Like there were no human children. There was no significant other. There was nothing else. And I found like I had no idea who I really was. I mean, and it sounds super meta and existential, but there were definitely days I remember being like, I don't know. And like the influencers would be online saying, to speak to your higher self or envision your higher self. And I just remember thinking, how do I know who my higher self is if I don't know who I am? And I ended up having to really take time. And again, therapy, some woo, and just like sheer dedication of, okay, if I hadn't sort of like gone down this track of kind of like who corporate Jen was, who would I have been? Like, who was she? Who is she? And I think that's another piece that just, like, I know other women go through this in different stages. Like, they become an empty nester. It's like, okay, well, now who I am. Or like they become a mom for what a year. And it's like, oh, where did myself go? And so I really had to figure out who would I have been without all of the chaos of my career and the persona I basically had to create for that career.
Funny enough, when I walked away from my career, losing that title never actually bothered me, and I can only assume that's because it never fit me in the first place. I had spent years killing myself for promotions that seemed to come slower than it did for my peers, just to earn a subtle and vague title change that never gave me the actual authority that I had earned. So I like to say I didn't just quit a job, I promoted myself to CEO.
So when I left General Mills corporate, I was in 2 different agencies and then I was out. And so my first post-corporate agency, I think I was like 39 or 40. And I remember, I had my director title and, I had my sort of director salary. And I also had the director workload. And I just remember at a certain point, like I vividly remember thinking, is this all it is? Like, because I think it's like you want to get promoted. And I was driven. I was like always promoting and, rising the ranks or switching, companies to do that. And I was like, is this it? Like, I'm now a director, right? Like a pretty high title. And what? This is terrible. Is this what we're doing? And that was probably the beginning. So that was probably the beginning of the, what? There's got to be something different.
There has to be something else. You mentioned therapy, and you had said that there was a lot of work that has to happen when you have built yourself on just your career without going further than you want to go. Was there anything that surprised you about the work that you had to do?
I think actually what surprised me the most was how much healing, and I'm going to say healing, but like personal development work you have to do when you start your own business. I actually remember having lunch with a friend of mine, and he had gone out and he didn't have, I guess, kind of like how I vision the business like you and I have. He was a consultant, but still, it's still the same things. And even he said he's shocked at all this like personal development work you have to do, the resilience to keep going. This is not easy, and yet it's super rewarding. I'd still rather be doing this work to serve myself than to serve the corporate overload.
The other thing that nobody warns you about is what your body is going to do when you stop forcing it to perform for somebody else. You had told me that there were 18 months that, in your own words, killed your brain. Take me back into that period. What was happening at the intersection of your health, your hormones, and your business at the same time?
I actually did not have this like magical, oh my God, I quit my job and I lost all this weight kind of moment. What ended up happening in the spring of 24 is I had a reaction to one of my Crohn's medications. And, it all sounds so easy, right? Like it's a medication. Actually, depending on your insurance, even when I was, employed by someone else, this was like a $1,200 to $2,500 a month, medication. And this has been my reality for decades. But the shortest version of what happened is spring of 24, my Crohn's came out of remission and I had a reaction to the medication I was on. So we switched medications. And so then I spent about 6 months on that one and I had a reaction to that too. And by the time we realized what was happening, it was real bad. Funny enough, it was actually another frog situation because my fatigue was super bad. My brain fog was like no one's business. I took a couple month hiatus in the fall of 24, like trying not to think about my business, which like sort of works and sort of doesn't. And I probably would have been better served to just be like, I'm shutting down my laptop for like 3 months. But I didn't because I just couldn't. And then I tried a third medication, also reacted to that. And what happened is like the reactions built on each other. So I think the final dose of medication I took was like in April of, oh my God, last year. And it took me until, I would say late fall, until I kind of felt like my brain came back online. Like this late fall. 0 out of 4 stars. I do not recommend.
Do not recommend. Got
Mm-mm.
it. You told me something else that I do believe, but I don't want to believe. And that's, your OB actually told you could not be in perimenopause because you were on birth control. You also had a board certified NP who finally saw you. And then the estrogen adjustment that you mentioned, it just happened a little while ago, that changed everything. Can you walk us through that whole arc? Because I guarantee that somebody listening needs to hear that right now.
And like, I have to say, like Gen X, we rock because we are not staying quiet about how bad the hormone stuff gets. So yes, I had probably like 2019, 2020-ish, I had an OB, my OB tell me that I could not be having perimenopause symptoms because I was on birth control. False. Super false. So false. Also, I was reacting to the birth control, and I had to, I happened to have met a local woman, and she was a double board certified nurse practitioner, and she went through the same thing, only she started to have symptoms while she was working at the OB office, and they were just not, they aren't taught any of this. So she left and was like, this is ridiculous. Like, she's part of her mission is, making women aware of our hormones and what happens. With her, I started I even just learned this recently. I at least use HRT as the acronym, hormone replacement therapy, but or technically I think it's just HT, hormone therapy, whatever. But I started taking progesterone for my sleep, and I was like, holy, I was finally sleeping. And I did some experiments on going off birth control, staying on it. And then it just got to the point where I think I went off it altogether. You were born with the uterus, and you're kind of in that late 30s to early 50s. And it's not just that range, but we'll give you a broad one. And you have weird freaking symptoms. Find someone who will listen to you about your hormones. I have a friend whose ears itch. I kid you not. You can go on social media and you can look up threads, go to perimenopause threads, and I kid you not, you could put in any random thing and people be like, oh my God, me too. And that's the thing. And it's experimentation. I did start estrogen, I think maybe a year ago, in addition to the progesterone. And I'm telling you, the progesterone, that's why you need sleep, kids. I needed to bump my estrogen up again. I still don't understand. There's the whole thing about, to know if you're, I'm just going to say, out of perimenopause, you have to not have a period. You have to not bleed for 366 days. So you have to go a year and a day. But then I'm still, it's literally on my question to ask my OB this week when I see her, so am I considered now in menopause? Am I close? I don't really understand it. I still don't understand it.
And you're exactly right. The symptoms could be anything or everything or nothing. And it's hard to tell. I was in perimenopause for probably a full 5 years before I realized it. Because I thought I was just going crazy and I was just stressed out. I was just tired. I was just not sleeping. I think it wasn't until I had my first hot flash that it dawned on me. Oh, I hear this is perimenopause. That's probably what's going on. And finally got my hormone levels checked. So yeah. Another thing about women our age is that about 50% of us are prescribed antidepressants, myself included. You said sometimes it's a hormone thing. What do you wish more women knew before they accept an antidepressant prescription?
It's a travesty to women. I won't talk about my personal feelings on medical gaslighting, but it is the fact that women are told you're just stressed, or, oh, you're going crazy. Number one, no, then do something. Why do we have to be stressed, right? Why can't we fix systems? But that's a whole different topic. I want more women to know that it can absolutely be your hormones. If you look at what estrogen does for us and how it keeps us sane, that's part of it. And so when our levels drop, and our levels just dropped period. Like, that's not like there's nothing wrong with us. It's just like men's testosterone levels drop. But like the way it affects our brains, yes, we think we're crazy. And then doctors tell us we're crazy. I take actually take anxiety meds. So like, I don't have the stigma against medication. I have a stigma against medication when that's not the problem. So if your doctor's telling you you're crazy, even if it's a female doctor, you can get a second opinion. I don't care if you go to Reddit and social media to get a second opinion. There is too much throwing medication at women that is not treating the actual issue, which in the case I'm describing is hormone fluctuation.
Another thing that could be hormone fluctuation is brain fog. But it turns out brain fog is not just one thing. For both of us, it was hormones, but also ADHD and anxiety and stress on top of each other. What was your moment that you realized you just couldn't push through it this time?
So I also get brain fog because I have fibromyalgia. I think some of my meds might be able to cause it. Who knows? Having a lot of chronic illness before my hormones decided to come out and play. Like, there's patterns. Like, I know in the spring, I a lot of times will get a fibromyalgia flare. This time, seemed like there were enough symptoms where I literally could not tell. Was it fibro? Was it just like a bad fibro thing? Like, we had a lot of rain in Minneapolis. Like, was that making my joints weird? And so I'm extra foggy. Is it perimenopause? Is it a hormone thing? Do I have ADHD? Like, I don't know. And I tried getting to the bottom of that. I think some of it's actually sleep. I'm not sleeping enough. We're working on that. And some of it was hormones. The hormone boost helped. It became this thing where I think I just was like, I still have to work. Like, I still have to work. I have to do something. So like, what can I do? What systems can I put in place so I can still try to work through the brain fog?
Speaking of systems to work through the brain fog, you have created something called the Brain Fog Busters Skills, referring to the skills or capabilities within the AI platform Claude, which I also use. You built those for yourself first before making it available to others. What was the first skill that you built, and what problem was it solving on the day you literally could not think?
I basically created a skill for when I have brain fog, where I can, like, depending on the day and how Claude's operating, I either manually update it or it actually will start to, some days it works where I say I have brain fog, and it reduces the cognitive load, because AI is both so helpful for helping you work, especially when you have like fluctuating energy or capacity constraints, or you're just juggling 1,000 different things. It can also hallucinate, gaslight you, and add to your cognitive load. And I don't know, one day I was like, this is ridiculous. So I think I just like went into Skill Creator and I was like, oh, we need to create something so on the days that I have brain fog, like, I can still get work done. And so I created that. And then I ended up creating a very similar skill for trying to brainstorm, because I don't know if you've ever brainstormed with AI, but like, you're brainstorming one thing and the next thing you know, you're like down 8,000 rabbit holes. And it was like, how did we get here? So I created like a protocol that I make it follow for that. And then this one is, I don't know why, it just makes me giggle, but it's like a tech translator, but actually it's just like a plain language translator, which is you can literally give it anything and be like, can you explain this to me in like layman's terms? I needed somebody to explain what an MCP was. I was like, I need you to like give me an example. So I created them as skills. And the funny part was that like I actually already had them for myself. And when the Capacity Chronicles guide came up, that opportunity, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Because like I use them. And for me, I actually really enjoy offering things that other people can customize. So I'm not worried about my IP when it comes to AI tricks. This is literally take my stuff and customize it to work for you. I think I even have that somewhere in like the messaging for it. Like, hey, customize it. It's perfect. Take that and make it your own. That's what makes me happy.
When I saw your Brain Fog Buster skills in the Capacity Chronicles, that was why I reached out to you in the first place. I'd like fist pumped at my desk because I saw a free resource that was Claude Skills for Brain Fog Days. Nobody else was building that. The other thing I like is how part of how you came back kind of to yourself. I would have rolled my eyes at this 5 years ago. So let me play the curious skeptic for
Yeah,
a minute.
please.
What we're talking about is human design. I want to give the audience that layperson's version because I just learned about it myself a few weeks ago. So I can play the new student here and let you teach. What is human design and what is it not?
Okay, so human design, I think like something would say it's a metaphysical tool or something, but it takes a bunch of different systems: astrology, the Chinese I Ching, the Bala, the quantum physics, the chakra system, and it's based on your birth date and time, and it really gives you an operating manual of like how your body and your energy are meant to work. And some of the language sounds culty, but that's not the intent. In fact, the original intent, I believe I'm remembering this correctly, was actually human design was, for lack of a better word, downloaded to Ra-Uru, who, like, I guess translated that, created it as a tool to help parents, to help them raise their kids to be less conditioned, quote unquote, and like really be able to operate in more alignment. I've heard it described as like an operating manual, and it really is. And you don't have to follow it in this like rigid, like dogmatic thing. And I will say that human design helped me as I was in that place of like figuring out who I was and like who I would have been. And it really helped me start to accept myself and really love a lot of things about myself that prior to this like would have been seen as negative. I was like, no, I'm a line 5. I'm not a job hopper. I get bored and like I want to jump in, help things, and get out. And I found it really like empowering, and it was really good for self-acceptance.
I would never have considered that. But when we talked last time, you told me to send you my birth info and then you would run my chart for me, and you did. Can you tell our audience what you found? Because I'm still a little shook about it.
Yeah, I mean, what was the part that shook you the most?
Emotional generator. What does that mean?
Yeah. Okay. So human design has many, 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 many layers and specialties and whatnot. I always recommend people who are new to start with your energy type, what's called your authority, which is how you are meant, and I'm using quotes, like to make decisions, your strategy, which gets a little fuzzy, understandably, and then something called your profile, which are kind of like, in my mind, your superpowers. So generator is your energy type. I'm also a generator. Generators and the type manifesting generators make up about 70% of the population. When we are like lit up by something, they'll say like lit up, or we really enjoy doing something, we have energy that replenishes itself. So there might be certain things where you're like, oh yeah, I could do that for like hours on end. Like I'm in the flow, or I can just, I can go do XYZ for hours. That's our sacral center being like self-replenishing. I'm probably getting some of the words wrong. When you're me and you're a generator, but you also have severe fatigue, like I can't always keep going. Emotional means emotional authority, and it's how you're meant to make decisions. And the easiest way to explain this in the highest level is you are meant to ride what they call an emotional wave. So you kind of have to like feel your feelings about things and wait till you get to a point of neutrality, and then decide if something is, you want to do something or not. And it doesn't mean every decision. It's not like you have to ride an emotional wave to decide if you're having like coffee or tea. It's more like, let's say you have a big decision coming up, sleep on it, or let's say you have an intro call with someone and you think like, oh my God, that went so well. Like I totally want them to be on my podcast. It's like wait and see how you feel in a little bit. Like, do you still want them on? Or do you think like, ooh, actually this would not be a good fit? And 50% of the population has emotional authority. When you think about corporate America, you think about how decisions are usually made, how many times you're put on the spot. Like, no, 50% of people are not meant to make decisions on the spot. I think there's 7 different decision-making authorities. So emotional's the most people. The second most is sacral. So I am sacral. I make decisions with my gut. Like literally yes, no. type things, which I found myself randomly at one point when I was first learning about human design, be like in a store, and I would just literally be saying out loud to myself, no, no. And I was like, oh, wait, hi, say girl. And generators, we master things. So like we go all in on something, and all in is like relative, right? Like, but we might master something and then we get really frustrated because we like plateau, and then we want to learn again. And if that doesn't describe my entire career, I don't know what does. Because it's like I would master a skill, or like, oh, I was really good at, I took a job in quantitative research. Cool. And then at a certain point I was like, oh, okay, let's keep building. Like, let me, promote or like expand my scope or something. And if a company wouldn't work with me, I'd be like, cool, well, guess what? This company does. And then I'd leave. I wasn't a job hopper. I was looking to master more things.
As someone who had not believed in these things until I met you, I felt really called out because you actually described my experience for like the last 30 years, especially the emotional authority piece, because people, 30-year corporate career, people want you to make decisions right away. And I always felt on the spot when someone asked me to do that. And so I would make a decision, but I would very often take the time to think about it and then have to come back to them and say, you know what, now that I've thought about it, I feel differently, and let me explain why. And you just explained all of that for me. So the line 5 over line 2 thing, the heretic and the hermit, can you translate that for us?
Yeah. So that's referring to what they call the profile. The profile is like, oftentimes it's described as if you were a character in a play. This was like the role you would play. If you're looking at your human design chart and you see all sorts of numbers, and then there's like a point, like a decimal point, and then another number, that other number after the decimal point is quote unquote a line. The first number tends to be what you are more conscious of. Second number, it is representative of your unconscious side or your design side. So in human design, there's 2 sides of things. There's your personality and your conscious side, and then there's your design or unconscious side. So when I say tend to be, it means like you tend to be less aware of those lines or those traits. And so like, unless you're me, because I'm a 5-1, and I was very aware of my line 1 energy, which is the investigator. So I was like, oh yeah, research, insights, all of these different things. I was totally unaware of my 5, my heretic energy. And heretic energy is, the best way this was described to me was by one of my first human design teachers, where she was like, 5s are like the Avengers. We, people either can love us, they might hate us. We like to come in, we fix something, and then maybe people love it, maybe they don't. The names of the different lines are, I actually think it's funny. I don't remember the reason, like why Raw has these names, but they are a little bit like line 2 is the hermit, 5 is the heretic, line 3s are the martyr. And all of those words can be very emotionally charged. But like with a 3, martyr just means like they are willing to sacrifice themselves because they are the ones who are here they do a lot of experimentation, and that's how we get innovation. But when you do experimentation, you have test and fail. So they're like willing to be the people who fail on things. And that's why they're a martyr. So hermit really just means you need alone time sometimes to just like recharge or to get your, creative juices flowing or just whatever. It doesn't mean like you're a social pariah or that you're an introvert. It just means if you're feeling like overwhelmed or you're just stuck on something, like go be by yourself for a little bit. See what happens.
Well, thank you. I feel so seen now by you, so thank you.
You're welcome.
No, you bring this human design framework into the strategy sessions that you are now launching. How does human design show up inside actual business strategy?
I'm a big old activator. So anyone who's done StrengthsFinder, like that was my number 3. So I'm always like, how do we take action? And I love explaining human design to people so they can feel seen and like really embrace who they are. But it's also like, cool, what do we do with that? I look at the gamut of like all the business things. So like, Jen, if you came to me, I'd be like, okay, let's talk about like your business and your goals and your objectives, like your audience, all of these things. And then I say, okay, let's talk about you. But How do you like to work? Like, what capacity constraints are you maybe dealing with? If you're open to me running your human design, I'll run your human design, because that can factor into how we might create a truly personalized strategy. Example, I right now offer strategy sessions. It's like a one-time thing, unless somebody asks me for more, and then I'm happy to discuss it. But for now, like, I only have the energy to just like come in and to help somebody one time and then go from there. Part of it's my line 5, part of it's respecting my energy, and part of it's just kind of like where I am. So that's how I look at human design. I look at the different elements in your chart, and I really do well. 5s do really well with like solving a problem, and generators need something to respond to. So I would literally say, okay, Jen, tell me what's going on. That's how all my sessions usually start. It's like, tell me what's going on. Tell me what's challenging you. Tell me questions you have or what you want to fix. And then we'll go from there. And then that's when I look at someone's chart and think, okay, so this piece might matter, and we'll talk about that.
And for people who are interested in maybe doing the strategy session for you, we'll have a link in the show notes of how they can get a hold of you to book that. I wanted to switch a little bit to something you told me on our call, which is that the personal Jen, not the business Jen, would call this episode a win if you helped one other woman get the freedom that you got. You call that the FU mission, and I personally love an FU moment. Talk to me about that. Who is the woman you're trying to reach?
I fundamentally believe that we get to do business our own way. We get to do career our own way. We get to do what we want, right? Like, yes, blah, blah, blah. We have to do things like pay taxes, but like ultimately we get to do what we want. The FU is to all of these rules. It's to all of these like things that it's like again, maybe this is like just like a Gen X elder millennial thing, but it's like, I don't have to be corporate Jen anymore. Like, I don't care. I am going to show up in a messy bun, or I'm going to, put on some makeup for this call. But you just don't have to follow all of these rules that everybody gave you, and you don't have to stay pigeonholed. It's just like, you really like F the system, to me. If I can help somebody else find the freedom I have, being able to leave corporate and start a business, run it however I want, that is a win for me, because it is such a toxic cesspool, and not everyone can leave, and I totally get that. But if they can, like my worst days, and again, I'm living with my parents in my late 40s, okay? It's not Shangri-La yet. Might be. But like, it's still better. The stomach cramping I would get, like even just listening to a friend of mine who just like got a new job, and she's like way back in the corporate thing. It's like, this stuff they deal with is terrible, and it made me sick. And if I can help somebody in any way make their lives a little bit easier or leave a job, that makes me happy. Or just know you're not alone.
Amen, sister. Yeah, I love that I don't have to show up as corporate Jen anymore either. And the one thing that I don't miss the most is the Sunday scaries that used to start on Fridays for me. I do not miss those at all. Now, you and I talked a little bit about generational impact. We talked about our daughters, your niece, your 14 going on 60 cousin. What does it mean to you that the next generation might not have to do this the way we did?
Oh my God, I'm so excited for them. Like every time I see something, whether it's just like an Instagram post, like words on a caption, or it's just like I see the confidence younger like little girls have, or like younger women have, I am so excited for them. Like, I'm so excited that they won't have to deal with some of the constraints we had to deal with. All the generations before us, like each generation, the women we get to like get rid of some of these chains and really these constraints, and it's just like forced whatever on us. And I'm like, I have a super sassy, she's like my cousin niece. She's my cousin, but technically she's like another niece. She's so sassy. She's driving her mother crazy because she's a teenager. And I'm like, I love it. Again, I'm an aunt though, so I don't have to deal with it, but she's just super sassy and confident. I'm like, oh my God, yes, you go, girl.
Yes, I'm excited for it too. I'm totally here for it. My whole journey has brought me back to kind of a full circle moment. And that I think about my grandmothers, both of them. One was a farm wife, and working outside of the home was not even a consideration. It was not a thing that you did. My mother had to work outside of the home. We had to be a two-income household, or we would not have been able to afford the four kids, and the two parents. So she didn't feel like she had a choice either. And for the first 30 years of my career, I didn't have a choice. I had to be a working mother. There was no other choice for me. So the fact that I'm now at a point where I have the option to stay home for the first time in my life, I don't have to work, but I work my butt off because I love it. That is the way I think it should be, and the way I hope it will be for my daughters and your nieces. Just, it's about having choice, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For our listeners who are still in the gap, they can't tell anymore if it's perimenopause, ADHD, chronic stress, or all of the above. They've been white-knuckling their career or their business or their life for a while now. What do you want her to hear?
I want her to hear she's not alone. If this is you listening, I want you to know you're not alone. You are not crazy. Even if you might have, depression or anxiety, like some of that can be from your hormones, or your hormones make it work. But I just want you to know you are not alone. Part of giving choice and part of even just the education about hormones and things like that, it's like we have to break down these like suffer in silence things. I probably never do. I am not a suffer in silence really person. I am a redhead, and I'm a big old Aries, but you aren't alone. If you're feeling overwhelmed, take one symptom or try one thing that you might like, if it was like just ease your stress, or maybe you want to just be like, I don't even know how to do that. So it's like, is there something that brings you a tiny little bit of joy? Like, how can you bring that into your life more, right? Like I try to be, it's so much easier said than done, but it's like, be present and mindful. It's like, okay, I've got 1,000 things in my head. Cool. You know what I try to do though every morning? I try to like take a little couple second pause when I see how ridiculously excited my dog gets to be fed breakfast, and she's hilarious, right? So it's like try and find just a tiny little bite or just something tiny to try to alleviate some of what's going on.
I'm sure that everyone else has now fallen so completely in love with you like I have. And if that is the case for them, where can they find you? What's the best entry point into your ecosystem?
So my website, it's actually getting refreshed as we speak. Or I'm on Instagram. You can come find me on Instagram. I personally check my DMs myself. Like you can message me. You can be like, oh my God, I heard you. And like, do you have a thought on XYZ? Like, yeah, hit me up. You can probably find me on LinkedIn. I just don't like LinkedIn. Shocking, I know. But yeah, please, website, Instagram. Absolutely.
Reach out to Jen if you have a question or just want to start a conversation. Book a new strategy session with her if you feel so inclined, and then look for her Brain Fog Busters skills pack that we talked about for AI. All really good resources. So I always close with the same question for all my guests, and it is this. If our listeners can walk away with only one message from this whole conversation, what do you hope that is?
It's okay to be your full authentic you, your full authentic self. F everybody else if they don't like it.
I love an FU moment, as I said.
Yeah.
Well, Jen, this was such a pleasure. Thank you for being so generous with both your time and your heart. Everyone, that was my new best friend, Jen Fieldman. You can find her at jenfieldman.com, where her brand new one-on-one strategy session is now live. You can grab her free Brain Fog Busters skills pack as the easiest kind of first step into her world. And all of those links are going to be in the show notes for you. If today's episode landed with you, the best thing you can do is share it with the friend you thought of while you were listening. That is how you can help me and the show grow. If you'd like to reach out to me for any reason, I'll leave my contact information in the show notes too. Thank you for spending this time with us. This week, please be kind to yourself. I'm Jen Fass, and I'll see you next time on The Comeback Show.